Hello, everyone. How's it going? This is the Bald Metal Nerd coming at you with another wonderful, silly vid. This is going to be my final video that I make about collecting for probably a little while. In my first video that I talked about this, I talked about getting rid of my cassette collection. My second one, I talked about regretting getting rid of your collections. This third one is going to cover a real nice, lovely, upbeat topic, and that is, what are your plans for your collection, as you end the rest, the end of your life and ultimately, kick the bucket? Because, this is a tiny sample of, my CD collection here. So I got many, many, many more, which take up a decent amount of space. It has some value, which I'm still ascertaining. I've been in the process of figuring out what my CD collection is actually worth. And but once I shuffle off this mortal coil, and hopefully more than 40 years if I'm lucky, something's gonna have to be done with all this stuff, right? Because it's unlikely that my kids or grandkids are going to want to hold on to my collection of stuff. They'll probably just see it as junk, and honestly, to be fair to them, kind of rightfully so, right? So, do we just leave the collection for our heirs to deal with, our descendants, whatever, or should we, dispose of some of this stuff, while we still can? And when is the appropriate time to do that, right? Like, I don't know. I'm nowhere near that stage of life yet, but it is something to think about because, obviously my collection is still growing, and it's just going to get bigger. And, let's add 4 decades in, from now, who knows how large it'll be, right? So, it's interesting to think about this stuff. It's like, well, you collect for a long time, acquire a lot of stuff. What do you do with it when you're taking the final tour, such as it is, right? I don't know. That's a really good question. As for what I plan on doing with my various collections, because I collect more than just music, as I've mentioned in many of my other videos, I guess I'm going to try to figure out everything I have, figure out the value of it, and probably check the value of it like maybe once every 10 years or so, right? Because it's just not something that nobody wants to look up the eBay value of hundreds of items every day, because that gets really old really fast. So at least that's my plan, just to keep track of the rough value. Like I said, check on it every 10 years. And probably at some point in the future, I don't know when, perhaps, after I'm retired, and maybe I want to raise some money for a really nice fancy vacation, or God only knows what, right? I'd probably sell some of it off, because the goal, I think, is not to leave, hundreds and or thousands of items for your descendants to deal with, because let's say you do that, if your kids aren't going to really necessarily have the same interest you did, so they're not going to know what this stuff is worth. Like, let's pretend, I don't know, this album right now, I have no idea what it's currently worth, but I'm showing this one off because of obvious reasons. It just looks like a CDR. Obviously, it's not. A CDR is worthless in and of itself. This is just now made to look like a CDR. But let's say this thing is worth I don't know, we'll say it's currently worth $8 on eBay. I have no idea. I haven't looked this up yet, but let's pretend that that's what this is worth. $8 used in this condition, right? It's worth $8. Okay. Are my kids going to know this is worth $8? Of course they're not going to know that, right? So, when let's say in 40 years when I die, it's worth, of course, how many people are going to collect CDs? The market that's another thing. But let's pretend it inflates in value. Let's say it's worth, say, $20 40 years from now. We'll just throw that figure out there, right? Are my kids necessarily going to know it's worth $20? Of course not. They'll just, somebody comes along and says, I'll give you $3 for it. They'll say, yeah, okay, and they'll be done. And they'll lose out, obviously, on a huge amount of value, potential value of what that item would be. So, I don't know. I'm not great with just leaving the stuff around, and hoping that the decent value is gotten out of it, right? And of course, one other thing you have to think about with this stuff is, yes, right now there is a robust market for collecting many things, but that market will eventually shrink by virtue of the people being interested in this stuff dying off, right? Like, perfect example are, of course, CDs by System of a Down, right? Like, people who are fans of this band, let's say on the young side, we'll say their youngest fans are probably in, like, I don't know, generally, of course there are going to be kids who like this band, but generally we're going to say that the oldest people who like this are probably going to be in their, late 20s, right? That's going to be on the younger side, right? The oldest people will be, maybe we'll say 50, right? So, but let's say 30 years from now, whatever, 40 years from now, people who are into this stuff, right? A lot of them are going to be dead or really old. So the potential marketplace for buying said CDs will be very small. Because it's not like a 30-year-old 40 years from now is going to give a crap about owning a CD from System of a Down. That's just not going to be a thing that younger people are going to care about in that sort of a time frame, right? So obviously, collectibles, no matter what they are, have a limited time of value where they have any really sort of monetary value whatsoever. So just assuming that everything you collect and you like will have any value whatsoever once you shuffle off this mortal coil is foolhardy, to say the least. So again, this is just the question: how long do you keep it for? Do you want to get rid of it, get some money for it, yada yada? These are all just like, I'm just spitballing here. I'm not saying that there's one thing that works for everyone. This is definitely not a one-size-fits-all type of thing. This is a very individualized type of, problem to attack for every individual who collects things, right? So I'd be really interested, obviously, to hear your thoughts in the comments below, what you think about this. These are just some thoughts I had on the subject. Anyway, that's pretty much it. If you like this, thumbs up. If you hate me, thumbs down. Share, subscribe. All that fun stuff. Thanks so much for watching. Live long and prosper.